I am so excited, really excited here to actually bring you this amazing woman powerhouse. If you have ever heard of the short-term shop, this is the lady behind all of it. So this is Avery Carl. Welcome, Avery.
Thank you so much for having me.
Would you mind just introducing yourself to the audience, telling them basically who you are, what you do, and how we're talking today on the SDR Fest?
Sure. So my name's Avery Carl. I'm an investor first. I've got 250 doors, no partners. 8 of them are short-term rentals, and they are across several markets. We're in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, Destin, Florida, 30A, Florida, and Cape San Blas, Florida. And then our long-terms are single families and multifamilies across multiple markets. I also run the Short-Term Shop, which is the country's largest short-term rental specific real estate agency or team. We're brokered by EXP. We have helped investors buy and sell just over 5,000 short-term rentals in the past few years. I've got a book out on Bigger Pockets Publishing called Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. And I also have a podcast called The Short-Term Show.
Amazing. So random story. I think I burned through your book when it first came out, like literally middle of the night, like, okay, let's just keep going. Just read. Very nicely written book. So guys, if you haven't,
thank you.
If you haven't seen that book yet, Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth, it's definitely a great resource to have. So how did you get started with, like, how did real estate investing come into your life? Like, what's your background? What's that story?
So it came into my life kind of by accident. I graduated college at like the worst time to ever graduate, which was spring of 2009. I graduated from University of Texas. There were no jobs. I had played in bands and done, some touring and things throughout college. So I just said, well, I'll just keep doing this for a while. So played guitar and bass in several touring bands that nobody's ever heard of. Got to see the world, got to do a lot of cool things, and did a lot of bartending to support myself during that time. And so in 2013, my husband, Luke, and I moved from New York City to Nashville. And that was back when Nashville was affordable, back when Nashville was still like halfway cool. And our real estate agent at the time, so I went back and got my master's degree, was working on the music business side of music in Nashville. Thought I had my dream job for about a minute and a half. And our agent was really trying to get us to buy in this super hip, fast appreciating area of Nashville called East Nashville. And we said, no, we are moving from Brooklyn to Tennessee. We're going to go out in the country. We are sick of neighbors. So we bought something out in the country with no neighbors, and it was awesome. But we did have a little bit of money left, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with it. We actually went into an Edward Jones office, a financial planner office in the building that my job was in, to see like, we've got this little bit of money. Maybe we need a financial planner to help us. And she told us we didn't have enough money for her to work with us. And we're like, oh, cool, great, cool. So this is awesome. And so we thought, well, we got to do something with this. And I remembered our agent telling us that. And I said, well, what if we buy one of those houses and we just put a renter in it, so we're not having to pay the mortgage. And in 20 years, when our future kids need to go to college, we can sell that house and pay for it out of the appreciation and not out of our job incomes, which I was super into Dave Ramsey at the time, not anymore, obviously, but we did it. And we said, okay, let's do this. So we bought a long-term rental in Nashville, and it was cash flowing about $900 a month. So the mortgage was $650 a month, and we were doing, I think the rent was $1,450, and it gradually went up over time. And so we realized that was about the same amount that I was making after all the deductions on my paycheck. Because by the way, guys, in case you didn't know, the music business pays basically nothing because it's very sexy and anybody will do it just to say they were in a room with some idiot famous person last night. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, wait a minute. This house is making the same amount that I'm making to sit in this office all day and get, my boss told me to go put ice on her orchids. And so we said, well, I think we're onto something here. So then we just had a little bit of money left, and we said, well, what can we buy that's going to make us the most amount of money the fastest so that we can go buy more? And at this point, we actually started reading books and listening to podcasts and Bigger Pockets and actually educating ourselves on real estate investing. And so we said, well, let's buy a short-term rental. Let's buy a vacation rental. And we didn't want to do it in Nashville because regulations are just crazy. It's constantly changing, and we could not afford to make that kind of mistake. So we bought in the Smokies, and which is, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, about 4 hours east of Nashville. And we realized we needed to self-manage because the average property management spread at that time, which again, guys, this is like 2015. This is before there were a zillion people selling courses. There were not co-hosts. There were not all these things. It was just the brick and mortar old school property management companies. And they wanted 40% of our gross. And that was normal. They all charged that. And we said, well, wait a minute. We can't give you 40%. We need 40% to go buy more. So we figured out, we were like, well, Airbnb is here. We've got Vrbo. We can do this from Nashville. We just have to figure out a cleaner situation. So again, back then there were no courses on how to do all these things. There were no podcasts on this. And so we just kind of figured out how to do it, and got a cleaner, got a handyman, did everything else with just the Airbnb and Vrbo apps. Even the property management softwares were like in their infancy back then. And we made it work and scaled 1 to 5 in the Smokies over the course of about 2 years. 5.5 years later, we've got 250, and that's it. And to make a long story long.
No, that's so amazing. So amazing. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so before I delve into the short-term rental piece, for your long-term rentals, where are those ones spread out?
They're all over, several Southeastern markets, a few Midwestern markets. Okay. We like to keep it like medium-sized metro areas, not huge ones. So, but these are areas where there's not going to be a lot of appreciation. It's just strictly cash flow. So it's not something that's going to be, worth double what we paid for it in 10 years. It's probably going to, stay the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of like to highlight those because I found that like a number of people, when they listen to things like this, think that we're saying, okay, just do this one thing and your life will be very different. But the fact is, most of us on here who are doing short-term rentals are also doing other things and are diversifying in some way or the other as we need to. So as long as that's really clear. Okay. So you said doing the short-term rentals. At what point did you start, selling the real estate?
Okay, yeah. So it kind of happened around the same time. Once we got our second property, I decided to get my real estate license for 2 reasons. One, because a lot of times, I'd be looking at something in the middle of the night. I was going to work in the morning, and that way I could just look on the MLS and see without having to bother anybody. And there weren't any agents who could really answer our most basic questions about short-term rentals. And then also my husband, who's a New Yorker, it can be difficult to deal with. So I was tired of having to like manage his conversation or his communication with agents. Like he's just very aggressive and loud talking. And it just didn't work with these Southerners. Like I could say that because I myself am a Southerner, and we don't like to be aggressed at. We don't like to be direct. We like to beat around the bush and sugarcoat everything. So I was just like, okay, I'm tired of having to explain this New York bar owner to these Southern real estate agents. So I'm just going to do this. And so got my license really just to kind of do our own deals. And what happened was we had friends who would say like, you're making how much on that cabin in the Smokies? Help me buy one. Teach me how to do that. And then it became friends of friends. And then it became people we didn't know, like real clients. And so Short-Term Shop was kind of born there. And so what we do is if you buy with us, instead of having to go, buy an additional course, like we teach you everything you need to know about managing your property. And we've got all the support tools that you need. We've got a support community. We've got cleaners, handymen. They don't work for us. We've got recommendations. So you've got everything you need to like make sure that you're successful with it. And we just kind of organically grew it market by market. So now we're in 20 markets total. We've got 50 agents. Between all of us, we own 400 units. So we're all, practicing what we preach, but it all kind of happened around the same time.
Yeah. It's, so I talk with a lot of physicians who are trying to get into short-term rentals. And very often I will tell them actually, like, listen, when you're starting with real estate, you are the one buying. Like your realtor is there to help you, but don't think that they would like basically I limit their expectations for realtors until they tell me, oh yeah, I found someone in short-term shop. And I'm like, oh, okay. So now let's have a conversation. So what did your realtor say again? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not making this up because I have you on live, because the fact is that a lot of realtors, no fault of theirs, just don't understand the workings of short-term rentals. And so, sometimes they would basically take people away from their goals and plans. But the ones that I've had who have worked with your team have either come back with a deal under contract, or something that their realtor brought them, or that, oh yeah, you know what, don't buy that because XYZ, because the mountain is hard to go up or something like that. And I'm like, okay, that is useful insight that a host needs to have, getting their short-term rentals. So what do you find are some hangups that people who are new to short-term rentals have when they're trying to either pick a market or pick a realtor or basically get started, as they engage with you or your team?
So I think now people kind of have the opposite problem that we had when we started. When we started, we just had to figure it out as we went because there was no information out there. And I think now there's a lot of, there's so many influencers and people selling courses and all that. And I think it's really hard for new investors to sort through what is good information.
Yes.
Yeah, because, nowadays anybody can slap up Instagram reels with yellow subtitles and say, I'm an influencer. But a lot of times, you have to look at what their track record is. And is this person doing what you want to do? Or are they sitting in their mom's basement posting reels with yellow captions? You have to look at the track record. Okay, this physician is doing the thing that I'm doing and investing in the thing that I want to invest in. This is probably who I need to follow. So I think that there's just a little too much out there in terms of information. Yeah. And now there's just so many people who want to be content creators in this space that there's a lot of information that makes things way harder than it has to be, because we as content creators run out of stuff to say.
Run out of stuff to talk about.
Yeah. So we'll take this one concept that's hey, buy a house that needs some work so that you can add instant equity. So buy a fixer upper so you can do your burst strategy. And then instead of just saying hey, buy something that isn't renovated yet or that isn't updated yet and update the kitchen, we have to make these lists of, these are the 15 things that you need to do and the 1,700 things on a checklist that you need to do this, because it stretches out the content.
Yes.
So I think that a lot of times it's just too much information. It's at the end of the day, guys, we're just buying houses and renting them. We don't have to do all these crazy, this method and that method and the blah, blah, blah. You're just buying a house and renting it. Does it make enough money to where you feel good about the fact that you're buying this and you're making, is all this worth it? Is making this down payment worth what you're going to have in your bank account at the end? Okay, go. It doesn't have to be
answer. I so love that you said that, because even because it's funny, because after doing all the frameworks and the things and all the marketing and everything, after a while you come back and you're okay, I know I just said all that, but let's strip it of everything that I just said. Basically, unhear everything I just said and come down to the very meat of it, which is you're buying a house. Don't get it complicated. Okay.
Yes.
Don't make it any more complicated. Now, I know that over the past few years, markets have shifted. Interest rates have come in and kind of thrown their own, wrench in there. What are you seeing in terms of trends for markets that people are starting to look more into, or markets you feel that people are moving away from? Are you still buying? Would you, are there any markets that if you had to buy a property right now, well, I don't know if I'm asking the right question, but you know what? You can take that question however you will. Let's just do that.
Here's where I'm at. And this, I'm at a different point in my portfolio than a lot of people who might be listening. I will buy whatever I can find to make sense in any markets that I'm already in, and maybe a new market. So as of right now, there is one market that I don't want to say what it is just yet, because I am not under contract yet.
Yeah.
I was. And then I just switched. We could tell that story in a minute too. Yeah. So for me, I think there's a lot of people out there right now. And another big mistake too, that I think new investors make, is they are scared of big short-term rental markets. They're scared of Orlando. They're scared of Joshua Tree because they're like, there's so many. And they're like, I want to go where there's not any. And I think that that's not necessarily, I mean, there's no wrong way to do it. So I don't want to say that's not necessarily right, but that's what I'm going to say is people get scared of the markets that have a lot of rentals and they're like, no, there's too many people there. I got to go somewhere else. And they're brand new. They have no idea what they're doing. They don't know what it looks like for a cleaner to turn a vacation rental. And so they want to go like trailblaze off into these markets that don't have any short-term rentals yet. And guys, like, this is an established asset class now. We are no longer early adopters. If there are not short-term rentals in an area now, it's because there's not enough tourism to support that. So for me, if I'm buying something right now, a short-term, I want to buy in a very established market that has a lot of short-term rentals, which means there's going to be a lot of support vendors like cleaners, handymen, et cetera. I'm not going to have to go dig somebody up and try and teach them how to do this. Like, I am an elder millennial. I am tired. My back hurts. My back hurts right this second. I don't want to trailblaze. I want to do easy. So I know, there's opportunity in every market. I can go into the Smokies right now where everybody's like, it's saturated. My Smokies properties, I've got 5 of them. We're down last year, only 2.7%. So not much, but they are still doing double what they did in 2015, 2016. And I think a lot of people don't have the longevity in the market to realize that. So there's still plenty of opportunity and there's thousands and thousands more short-term rentals in the Smokies than there were when I started. So what I'm saying is there's opportunity in every market. If it's me, I know how to set up a good property. I know you've got to buy what the tourists have come to expect. Don't try to get crazy and buy something weird like a brick ranch home in a beach market that's not going to rent and say, oh, well, it was really cheap. It'll be fine. I'll do fine. You're not going to. Buy what the tourists have come to expect. Make it cute. Optimizing management is not that difficult. You're using your pricing tools. If you're not getting booked, you're going in and tweaking the pricing tool. Again, it's not rocket science. So I'm buying in a market where I don't have to work so hard to set everything up. I know how to set up a good property, good decor, good photos, good management, and just off to the races. I do not have the energy for trailblazing at this point.
That is. Yep. I keep saying yes as you're talking because that is completely true. There is literally a line in the book that I put together where I said, if you're in the middle of nowhere, there will also be nobody. Like no cleaners, because you need all these people to be able to come out and take care of your property. Then you're dealing with wells and septic, and there's barely electricity, there's barely internet. Little things that you wouldn't think about if you were simply closer to existing markets. Now, so how does the short-term shop work? Like, if somebody wants to work with you, work with your team, what's the easiest way or what's the best way that they can come, find you guys?
Okay. So easiest thing to do, we've got a YouTube channel at /the short term shop. We're Instagram at the short term shop. Our website is probably the best place to start. You can set up searches. You can see all 20 markets that we're in. You can set up searches for all of them. You can get connected with us to get scheduled with an agent, to schedule a meeting with an agent to talk about what you're looking for and what you want to do. And then, the way that it works is you come to us, we help you find the right property. We teach you how to manage that property so that you aren't just left floundering around with this $500,000 investment you've just made. So we want to make sure that you are successful all the way to the end, and we don't just close you and say, see you later. So we would like to make sure that all of our clients are successful and supported basically forever. We have people call us who bought with us 8 years ago who were like, oh my God, I had this situation. We're like, okay, cool. So we've got, a whole support community, and basically you have us forever after you close with us.
And so now, just for you though, now let's kind of talk a little bit about just kind of a high level, big picture, future pacing. Now, what is your take on how the market is going? Where do you possibly see it? I mean, I know you don't have a a way to literally see the future, but like based on what you're seeing right now, where do you see the short-term rental market heading?
Okay, so I don't have a crystal ball, but what I do have is insight into 20 different markets and what's going on with them all the time. They're beach markets, they're mountain markets. Some of them are more metro style markets. So, we get a pretty good cross section of what is happening. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think that now that the Fed, which does not affect mortgage rates directly, I'm just going to say that before some mortgage broker comments like, yes, I know, I own a mortgage company, but it indirectly affects things. So anyway, since all of the Fed's rhetoric and the rhetoric in the media, the rhetoric in the media is almost more important in as far as determining what the market's going to do than what the interest rates actually are. So now that all of that higher for longer and the tightening and the blah, 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 all of that rhetoric is over, and the Fed said, okay, we're not raising anymore. We're only going to lower from here on out. We don't know when. So the day that happened, interest rates dropped. It took probably about over 2.5 weeks. They dropped like 1.5 points to a level at the end of 2023 that most analysts had predicted we wouldn't see 6.6% until the end of 2024. So we've already made that huge drop. So what I think is going to happen is between now, which is January, and March, if you plan to buy this year, now is the time to buy in terms of being able to get a deal. Because what's going to happen as interest rates trickle down is more and more buyers. I read a statistic somewhere. I'll have to get it to you and put it in the show notes. Something like for every half point that the rate drops, another 8 million buyers enter the market. So as it trickles down, we're going to see, I think if we get to that 6% number, we are going to see multiple offers on everything again. There's going to be a ton more competition back in the market. So you guys who are serious investors, now is the time to get those deals, because the market has not picked up yet, the real estate market, and the inventory is really low. That's part of the problem, because sellers don't want to list their property in a high interest rate environment and then turn around and become buyers in a high interest rate environment. So that's why there's no inventory. Sellers don't want to become buyers. Buyers also don't want to buy in a high interest rate environment. So it's like, I've been calling it the great stalemate. It's like this stalemate of inventory. So what's going to happen as those interest rates tick down? Sellers are going to see, oh, okay, you know what? I'm ready to make this move now. And buyers are going to say, oh, you know what? I'm ready to make this move now too. And we're going to have this big I think multiple offer situation again. I don't think it's necessarily going to be as crazy as it was in 2021, but I think it is going to happen, and it's going to drive those prices back up. So if you can find a deal now that makes sense at the interest rate you're able to get it for, don't buy something that doesn't make sense banking on interest rates being lower. I hate when people say marry the house, date the rate. I think that encourages really irresponsible behavior. So find something that works now, and while there's not a lot of competition in the market, and knock that price down, beat that seller up as much as you can to get that price down, because the price is the price forever. Yeah. Once you buy it, that was what you bought it for. But your interest rate, you can change over time. So I think the buying window is the next quarter. I think once we hit March, floodgates are open. So I think now is a really, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not telling you guys what to do. This is just kind of what I see happening. But that's kind of where I see things going. Then in terms of like the short-term rental market as a whole, not just buying properties, I think that, and I've always been very pro, I will only buy vacation rentals and vacation markets. I don't and again, you guys might be super successful with this. That's the great thing about real estate investing. But buying in metro markets like a Dallas, Houston, places like that, I'm not a big fan of. And I think that as time goes on, and metro markets that have a lot of industry outside of tourism and a lot of primary homeowners are going to continue tightening restrictions. And I think that properties in vacation markets are only going to become more valuable, because these areas are areas that kind of depend on that. So I've always been very pro vacation market, just regulations wise. And I think that that's going to continue. So for me, vacation rentals all day, every day.
Yeah. I love that you brought up that fact, because when people hear of, STRs being highly regulated, that's the nuance that a lot of people miss, that there are places that actually depend on vacation, on tourist income. and are more likely to favor the presence of short-term rentals than say a Dallas that's currently fighting it right now. I don't think Houston has said anything about short-term rentals yet, but more and more of the metro area definitely will want to clamp down because they feel it's taking away from housing that people could otherwise use. But that's up for political debate. um, but yeah, so it's definitely worth placing that distinction. I mean, I'm sure that there are still places that have regulations that may be vacation markets, places that need like licensing and things like that. But it's a distinction that I think was good to have mentioned. Okay, so we've already mentioned sort of how people can find you. What is one kind of last tip you would like to leave the listeners with? Let's say actually a tip for maybe more experienced investors or more experienced folk at this point.
Okay, tip for experienced folks. I mean, I think kind of went over like now is kind of your window for deals. And I would say, I think a lot of people forget. So there's lots of great data sources out there now that did not exist when I started. And I think that people can get so wrapped up in only looking at the quantitative data that they forget how qualitative short-term rentals are. Like just because 4 bedrooms in this area do this much does not mean that the property you're buying is going to do that much, or doesn't mean that you as a manager are going to be able to do that much. So data is great, but you can't stop there. You have to use the qualitative stuff, which we call it the short-term shop, the enemy method, which is basically just going on. I had a conversation with a guy about this yesterday, going on the actual OTAs, not looking on Rabu and AirDNA and stuff. Go on Airbnb and look at people's listings and look at what amenities do the top performers have? What are they offering? What does their decor look like? What does their photography look like? What does their pricing look like? And emulate that. I think so many people get so caught up in like plugging things into a spreadsheet or a calculator and getting the numbers out and going, oh, okay, that doesn't work. Or sometimes saying, oh, this does work when it doesn't. So you really have to make sure that you're not stopping at the data. You have to go look at the qualitative things, the reasons why the data says what it says.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. That was definitely a good one. I think, and even something to even throw on there is so those who do like the stock market will say fundamental analysis and technical analysis. I think that's basically what you're saying, that you can't just use the numbers and ignore literally ignore what is literally on ground in front of you, like just the basics, like where is the property, what do you have, how will you manage it. Love it. Love it. Anyway, thank you so much, Avery, for coming on and joining us today. I mean, you definitely shared a lot of gems with us. And guys, so she said the short-term shop, find her YouTube channel, find her podcast as well, right?
Yeah, the short-term show.
Oh, the short-term show. Okay, amazing, amazing. Oh, and she also mentioned that they have a mortgage company. They do have a mortgage company. And I remember from a few months ago that you all also have the balance, what's that loan?
Oh, the DSCR loan?
Yeah, DSCR, and then the one for entrepreneurs that don't have like W2 job type loan.
Oh, the zero doc loan, DSCR.
It's like the balance sheet. Look, I'm totally blanking it
I'm
right
blanking
now.
on it too.
Yeah, but you guys definitely have it's the loan that is it's like a 10% down loan for business owners who may not show all the profit on their taxes, whatever. I'll remember it at some point and put it in somebody where I went down that rabbit hole. But definitely reach out to Avery and her team. They have been an amazing resource for my community as well. And I'm really grateful that you came on today. Thanks so much, Avery.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I hope you got a ton of value from this interview. Now, if you got any value from it, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to get your copy of the STR Blueprint to get your first or next short-term rental, go to thestrbook.com.